I have done video essays on 3 Eucharistic miracles so far: Lanciano, Buenos Aires, and Tixla. These videos seem to generate the most chatter in the comments out of any of the videos that I've made. They seem to be some of the most popular videos that I've made. I think of myself as being somebody more interested in philosophy than I am in miracles, but I'm a man of the people, and I try to give the people what they want, I guess. That's part of the game here on YouTube. And some of the people, one person in particular, Chris Cern, was asking about the Eucharistic miracle from Sokolka, Poland. Probably a much better case, he says. Chris says that there were 2 independent studies done and offers to look into them for me real quick. Well, Chris, I beat you to the punch. I've put together a video on the Eucharistic miracle at Sokolka, Poland. That's what we're going to do today. Chris, this one's for you. Roll the intro. Okay, let's start with a brief rundown of events that occurred at St. Anthony of Padua Chapel in Sokolka, Poland in October 2008, as well as the Medical University of Bialystok in January 2009. For this brief rundown of events, I'm going to be leaning heavily on this article, The Eucharistic Miracle of Sokolka, The Host is Tissue, From Heart of a Dying Man. This article is published on, and I'm going to mess up this pronunciation, but Aleteia, which is a Catholic website. This website doesn't appear to ever quote sources. They don't on this article, but we're going to read through it anyway because it does do a fairly good job at summarizing the schedule of events, but there are a few key points that I'm going to make in this article. First, the very beginning of this article says laboratory analyses confirm that the structure of the cardiac muscle fibers and the structure of the bread are intertwined in a way impossible to reproduce by human means. Keep that in mind, that this article is making a claim that the laboratory analyses confirm something, anything. I'm going to call into question whether laboratory analyses actually did confirm anything at all at the end. But first, let's go through the schedule of events. This event took place on Sunday, October 12th, 2008. 2 weeks after the beatification of Father Michael Sokolka. Keep that name in mind as well, and the fact that he was beatified on just 2 weeks before October 12th, 2008. During the Mass celebrated at St. Anthony Chapel in Sokolka at 8:30 a.m., a consecrated host fell from the hands of one of the priests during the distribution of communion, and he picked up the host, and in accordance with liturgical norms, he placed it in a small container of water. The host was expected to dissolve in the water, which would be later disposed of properly. A week later, on October 19th, the host, which was still largely intact, had a curved bright red stain like a blood stain. The water was untainted by color. The priest and nun of St. Anthony Chapel immediately notified the Metropolitan Archbishop of Bialystok, Edward Ozorowski, who went to Sokolka with the Chancellor of the Curia. Curia is just another word for Archdiocese, and other diocesan officials. They were all deeply moved by what they saw. The Archbishop ordered that the host be protected while they wait to see what would happen. On October 30th, 2008, by decision of the Archbishop, the stained host was taken out of the water and placed on a small corporal, which was then put back in the tabernacle. By mid-January of 2009, the altered fragment of the host had dried out naturally and remained like a blood stain or clot. That same month, the Archbishop requested histopathological studies be done on the host. On March 30th, he created an ecclesial commission to study the phenomenon. A piece of the altered host was taken and analyzed by 2 experts, Professors Maria Sobniak-Latowska and Professor Stanislaw Sulkowski, in order to ensure the credibility of the results. Both were histopathologists at the Medical University of Bialystok. Per this article, the specialists' work was governed by the scientific norms and obligations for analyzing any scientific problem in accordance with the directives of the Scientific Ethics Committee of the Polish Academy of Sciences. The studies were exhaustively described and photographed. The complete documentation was given to the Metropolitan Curia of Bialystok. Keep this in mind. This article is making claims that scientific norms were followed and that the studies were exhaustive. Again, I will call this into question. When the samples were taken for analysis, the undissolved part of the consecrated host had become embedded in the cloth. However, the red blood clot was as clear as ever. This transformed part of the host was dry and fragile, inextricably interwoven with the rest of the fragment, which had kept the form of bread. The sample that was taken was large enough to carry out all the necessary studies. The results of both independent studies were in perfect agreement. Okay, the claim here is that there was 2 independent studies. I will call that into question. They concluded that the structure of the transformed fragment of the host is identical to the myocardial or heart tissue of a living person who is nearing death. The structure of the heart muscle fibers is deeply intertwined with that of the bread in a way impossible to achieve with human means, according to the declaration of Professor Maria Sobniak-Lutowska. The study proved that no foreign substance was added to the consecrated host, another claim that I'm going to call into question. Rather, part of the host took the form of the heart muscle of a person near death. This kind of phenomenon is inexplicable by the natural sciences. At the same time, the Church teaches us that the consecrated host becomes the body of Christ by the power of his own words at the Last Supper, repeated by the priest during the consecration of the Mass. The results of the histopathological studies dated January 21st, 2009 were included in the dossier given to the Metropolitan Curia of Bialystok. Now that we have the timeline of events, let's discuss some of the red flags that I've seen. I'll start by saying that I'm instantly cautious whenever I think that there's a little bit of a cult of personality going on. When I saw that most of the publications that I was focused on were really highlighting the 2 professors, Professor Sokolka and Professor Sobniak-Lutowska, I was instantly cautious. Science is not about scientists. Science is about the method. A common theme here with the Eucharistic miracles seems to be a focus on the scientists instead of on the science. And this Eucharistic miracle is no exception. Per the Polish magazine Rzeczpospolita, Maria Sobniak-Lutowska from the Department of Medical Pathology of the Medical University at Bialystok participated in the closing of the beatification process of Father Michael Sokolka. Remember him from the article at the beginning. So she was already known to the Archbishop. I couldn't find anything about the other scientists in this case, but if I was a betting man, I would bet that he was known to be a Eucharistic miracle-friendly scientist, either known to his colleague, known to the Archbishop, known to both, or one of those. If anybody in the comment section can confirm that I'm wrong, please do let me know in the comments down below. But it does appear that I'm not the only person who thinks this. Here is a Reddit thread in which some Catholics were saying that they believe that both of the scientists in this case were indeed practicing Catholics. Problem number 2 is that the results of the scientific testing were never made public. Here is what was made public. Now, this is the website for the Archdiocese of Bialystok, so this is in Polish. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to English, though, using Google Translate. Here you'll see the entirety of what was reported from the Archdiocese of Bialystok. It's not much. This is it. This was published on the website on October 14th, 2009, though my understanding is that the official communication that is being published on the website in October 2009 was actually made public just like in the newspaper or something like that earlier in the year, I think in March in 2009, so about 6 months earlier. The Metropolitan Curia, or Archdiocese of Bialystok, informs the Church Commission appointed by Archbishop Ozorowski on March 30th, 2009 to investigate the Eucharistic phenomenon in Sokolka has completed its work. She examined the witness of the events and the decisions of the pathologists. The state of affairs is as follows. So it lays out what happened, and then it just says that on January 7th, 2009, a sample was taken and then was independently examined by 2 professors of pathomorphology University at the Medical University of Bialystok, they issued a unanimous opinion, which reads, the material sent for evaluation in the assessment of the two independent pathologists indicate myocardial tissue, or at least tissue of a body, and it most closely resembles myocardial tissue. Okay. So that's it. That is all that we get in terms of the science. It's just the Archdiocese saying, we spoke to the scientists, trust me, bro. That's it. None of the science was released. Now, I do have sources that I'm going to go over next that does say what the science actually was, but for now, I think it's enough to say that that initial article that we looked at that said that, two scientists independently came to the same conclusion. Do we know about that? All that we have is the Archdiocese saying that they received a unanimous opinion from two different scientists who definitely did independent research on it. We don't know what this research was. We don't know if it was actually independent. It sounds like there was absolutely no peer review. This is not science. This is not science. The original article that we looked at made some pretty strong claims that I don't think can be backed up by this super short press release from the Archdiocese of Bialystok. And problem number 3 is that the Department of Medical Pathology at the Medical University of Bialystok really seems to be distancing itself from this work done by these two scientists. On the screen next to me, you will see an article in Polish that, again, I'm going to translate into English. Thank you, Google Translate. The medical university officially disassociates itself from the results of these studies and emphasizes that the university does not endorse them. This is the position of the rector of the university, which a spokesperson of the university presents in the latest issue of the journal Medical Bialystok, published at the university. On Thursday, the position was made available to this Polish news organization. We did not do it as a university, the spokesman told PAP, and added that the research was carried out. Now, this word is translated as illegally, but I doubt it means illegally. It probably just means without permission, quietly, and outside of the official route. It took place in the academic department of pathomorphological diagnostics, but the university did not have any order to perform these tests. The study was also not registered anywhere. Please do not attribute the diagnosis to any specific faculty operating in the institution, wrote the spokesperson for the university. The spokesperson said that he respects the belief of his colleagues about the miracle transforming into a host, into the fragments of heart muscle, but he points out as a believer and at the same time as a doubting person that he has doubts. And he said that he doesn't question the diagnosis of his colleagues, although they were, quote, characterized by an emotional approach to the faith. They are experienced pathologists, so it is likely that the tissue that they studied did come from heart muscle, but the question is whose heart, writes the spokesperson. He emphasizes that a histopathological examination would not even give an answer here, and the doubts would be dispelled through a genetic and molecular examination. The spokesperson believes that the colleagues who undertook the diagnosis made a school error in that they tried to combine theology with biology. The spokesperson also said that the school proposed that they could conduct official research on the tissue, but the Archdiocese refused, explaining that the matter required calm. The spokesperson said that there were offers of tests from other experienced specialists at other medical centers as well. The Archbishop said, "We are dealing with an extremely subtle manner. If we confess that this is the body of Christ, we cannot just cut it into pieces and test it. We must be careful with a kind of fear." If you're asking me what you think I think happened, my only real answer to you is, I don't know. I never know. The science is never conclusive enough in these Eucharistic miracles. But I can hazard a guess. noting that this is really, really a tentative guess and that I would change my opinion on this in a split second if information was proposed that that made this opinion look, not super viable. But if you recall, I've brought up, particularly at Buenos Aires and Tixla, that this could be a case of bacteria. There's a certain kind of bacteria that gives off a red pigment that looks a lot like kind of decaying flesh. This kind of bacteria can grow on bread, particularly moist bread. So if you have bread dissolving in water and that bacteria is able to get in there, this seems like a fairly likely thing that might happen. And I don't know why it couldn't have happened here in Sokolka as well. What's funny is that I'm not the first person to think of this. On the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see another one of those pamphlets. I've found these pamphlets for every single Eucharistic miracle. I have no idea who makes them. They're just available on the internet, and nobody claims to have made them. Regardless, there's one for Sokolka as well. This one is a 3-pager. Here's page 1, 2, and 3. Page 2 even has pictures of Professor Skulkowski and Professor Sabania-Litowska. But page 3 outlines the case put forward by the detractors of this miracle. And yet several people who not only have never analyzed the material, but they have never seen it with their own eyes, have affirmed that the red color of the host is due to prodigiosin, a red pigment produced by the bacteria Serratia marcescens. Obviously, this is absurd, affirmed the specialists of Bialystock. Also, because the material observed corresponded to the cardiac muscle and not to bacterium. The scientists of Bialystok have analyzed the sample taken in purely scientific terms and not fideistic. Several accusations were even more absurd, according to whom the tissue analyzed pertained to a murdered man. Here's the thing, though. Both of those seem far more likely to me, just at the face of it, than bread turning into human flesh. We have never observed bread turning into human flesh, but we have observed bread growing bacteria on it that gives off a red pigment. And we also know for a fact that some people have tried to fake miracles to drum up support for a local business, to draw in pilgrims, things like that. So frankly, either one of those seems more likely to me, although I will say that the bacteria seems far more likely to me than the murdered man hypothesis. Additionally, the actual analysis done seems to have only been looking at it through a microscope, and there's no way for you to know what kind of animal that came from only looking at it through a microscope. So I would say that something that I find perhaps equally convincing to the bacteria is that this came from an animal heart. Like somebody, took a poor squirrel and put some squirrel heart tissue on it and then gave it to the scientists. That seems more likely to me than an actual miracle. And there is something that could change my mind. DNA sequencing could change my mind. But no genetic sequencing was done. On this sample, none was done in Tixla, none was done in Buenos Aires. Also, none was done at Lanciano, but that was before the technology became, I don't even know if the technology was invented by then. But if we had done genetic testing and we found that the genetic code was the same across all these different samples, and we traced the DNA, we saw that it was not only human DNA, but it was also the human DNA that was, Palestinian and Jewish and stuff like that. That would convince me. That would convince me. But not only is the genetic testing not done, but when offered, the Archbishop turns it down. Why would you turn it down? What's the point of giving this sample to some scientists and only letting them look at it through a microscope and that's it? That to me says that you're looking to confirm something, a pre-existing conclusion. You're not actually trying to do real science. Real science would have multiple different samples, some of which were bacteria, some of which were human hearts, some of which were animal hearts, some of which were just plain old bread, some of which One of which was the actual Eucharist. And then asking the scientists to see if they could tell which one was which and all that. Everything would have to be blinded, multiple sciences, peer-reviewed. None of that happened here. For all of those reasons, I'm not convinced. I could be with DNA sequencing, but right now I am simply not convinced. With that, let's go to the tier list. I'm excited to add Sokolka to the miracle tier list. Yes, this is not a Eucharistic miracle tier list anymore. I don't care. This is my channel. I make the rules. And so you might be surprised that I'm actually going to rank Sokolka in D tier. This is going to move the Tilma of Guadalupe down to F tier. Lanciano is going to stay in C tier. Why am I putting Sokolka in D tier? Well, for the following reasons. Lanciano, yes, the testing turnaround time is terrible compared to Sokolka, which actually has the best testing turnaround time. But the scientific work for Lanciano was actually published. The scientific work for Sokolka was never even published. It was just told informally to the Archdiocese. That's not going to cut it for me. The fact that we know nothing about what kind of science was actually done in Sokolka, to me, automatically ranks it lower than Lanciano. Even if we don't like the scientific work of Lanciano, the fact that there is science that was reported at Lanciano makes it better than Sokolka. For that reason, Sokolka could not be ranked higher than Lanciano, but what makes it higher than the Tilma? Well, there's just nothing supernatural as far as I can tell about the Tilma. I mean, we've detected paint on the Tilma. If we've detected paint on the Tilma, that to me says we have good reason to think that the Tilma is just a painting. Meanwhile, Sokolka, we haven't actually detected any kind of bacteria. We haven't detected that it's an animal heart or anything like that. Frankly, we haven't detected it because the testing hasn't been done because the Archdiocese is not allowing the testing. However, the fact that we haven't ruled out those options, to me, means that Sokolka does belong higher than the Tilma of Guadalupe. For those reasons, Sokolka is D tier. I forgot to record an outro, so we're doing it this way. What do you guys think? Where would you rank Sokolka compared to the other Eucharistic miracles? And just what are your thoughts about Eucharistic miracles in general? Have any of my videos changed your opinion on Eucharistic miracles? I'm still of the mindset that Eucharistic miracles are entirely for those who believe. Miracles really don't convince many people, I don't think. They more act as reinforcers for people who already do believe. Maybe I'm wrong. If you disagree, leave it down below and I'll try to engage as many of you as I can. Thanks, everybody.